I used to be a top-notch player on our elite division hockey team, the kind of squad that made our little Scandinavian town puff out its chest with pride. Back in my hockey star days, folks were always asking me to show up at all sorts of shindigs, and I even said yes to strutting my stuff as a model in a fashion show. The best part? I got paired up with this drop-dead gorgeous blonde for the big finale. We were the bride and groom, and man, I couldn't have been happier about that. Her name was Roy Bennett, but I just called her Emma, and me, Michael Svensson. We hit it off at the after-party, laughing and having a blast. Things got so wild that when I woke up the next morning, there she was in my bed, and after that, we just kept sharing it every single night. Life was sweet for me and Emma back then. We'd get invites to all these fancy events and parties, and she couldn't get enough of the glitz and glamour. But when we started talking about tying the knot, things hit a snag. I had a nice house, a decent chunk of cash, stocks in some solid companies, and a pricey car, while Emma's big assets were her wardrobe and a mountain of shoes. We bickered about it a bunch, but I finally talked her into signing a deal that said whatever we owned before the wedding stayed ours, no matter what. She came around eventually, mostly because we were in it for a lifetime of real love, not some cash-grab divorce down the road. Everything was smooth sailing in our marriage until a few weeks back when Emma started dodging me on random Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday nights with these weird excuses about not being in the mood. At first, I brushed it off, but then I asked her straight up if something was off, and she just waved it away like it was nothing. Then came this one lousy day when everything was already going sideways from the day before, and Emma shot me down again when I tried to get close. The weather didn't help either. It was cold, windy, and pouring rain, which just cranked my bad mood up to 11. Work was no picnic either. After choking down a bland lunch with a coworker who wouldn't shut up, I realized I'd left some key notes I needed for my job back at home. So, I figured there was only one move: head back to the house and grab them. When I got there, something felt off in the kitchen, but I couldn't put my finger on it right away. It took me a minute to piece it together. Turns out, Emma had been home. She'd grabbed the mail from the box and dropped it on the workbench, same spot she always used when she rolled in from work around 3 o'clock. The envelopes were still damp from the rain, so she couldn't have been gone long before I showed up. Now, things were already rocky between us that day, and she never popped home during work hours, so my curiosity kicked into overdrive. Had she brushed me off the night before because she was sneaking around with someone else on her lunch break? I checked our bedroom. Everything was just how I'd left it that morning, but when I poked my head into the spare room, I got a real shock. There was a gold-plated lighter sitting on the brown carpet, half tucked under the bed. Neither of us smokes, so it was pretty clear someone who did had been in there, probably not even 30 minutes before me. That lit a fire under my suspicions, but I left the lighter right where it was and decided I'd dig into what Emma was up to. No one had lit up in the house, no smell, no ashes, so if her visitor was a woman, she'd have kept that lighter in her purse, not dropped it out in the open. Nope, all signs pointed to a guy, one who'd probably fumbled it out of his pocket while he was messing around on that spare bed. You don't need a detective to figure out what might have been going on. Later that night, after work, things went on like normal, or at least we acted like it. Neither of us brought up being home earlier. While Emma was glued to her usual soap opera on TV, I slipped back into the spare room to check things out. The lighter? Gone from the floor. I looked around, no sign of it in there or the kitchen either. Later that night, I made up some excuse about having work to finish before hitting the sack, so Emma turned in early and was already out cold by the time I slipped into the bedroom. I peeled off my clothes, but instead of crawling into bed, I tiptoed out to the kitchen and over to the hall where Emma's handbag always sat. A fast peek inside revealed that gold-plated lighter tucked in there. Yep, she'd grabbed it. No question about it now, Emma was tangled up in something with someone, and I was dead set on figuring out what. The next evening, I checked her bag again, and wouldn't you know it, the lighter had vanished. A couple weeks back, I'd spotted a flyer in the junk mail from a locksmith and alarm shop, bragging about their gadgets. What stuck with me was this tiny alarm detector, about the size of a smoke alarm, complete with a little camera and a prepaid cell card that could beam messages and pick straight to your phone. So, the next day, I swung by and picked one up, along with a couple of regular smoke detectors that looked pretty close in size. They all ran on batteries, so setting them up was gonna be a breeze. Come Saturday, Emma was off running some errand for her folks, and the kids were out messing around with their friends, so I tested the gizmo. It worked like a charm, even better than I'd hoped. When she got back, I casually mentioned how we'd been chatting about smoke detectors at work, and it just made sense to beef up our setup for safety's sake. She didn't bat an eye. I rigged the alarm to kick on Monday through Friday, from the minute I left the house till Emma rolled in, right before the kids got home from school. Everything hummed along fine that first Monday and Tuesday, but then Wednesday rolled around, and bam, the alarm tripped after just a few minutes. My phone buzzed with these tiny snapshots showing Emma locking lips with some guy right there in our hallway. The absolute worst crap I could imagine was going down in my own house, and I knew I had to move fast to deal with it. If Emma and this joker were getting busy in the spare room, maybe I could catch them in the act, bust in with a camera and snap some proof of my sweet wife's little side hobby. Sure, they could have been up to something harmless, but that kiss? It screamed anything but innocent. I floored it home, cutting the trip down to about 10 minutes, and parked on the street so they wouldn't spot my car from the spare room window. I crept into the house, quiet as a mouse, and didn't hear a peep from the kitchen or living room. The spare room door was shut tight, but as I edged closer, some muffled noises started leaking out. I flipped my camera to auto mode, 9 shots with every click, and got myself ready. I sucked in a big breath, gripped the camera tight, flung the door open, and charged in. I'd braced myself for the ugliest scene possible, and damn if I didn't walk right into it. There was Emma, still in her blue top, flat on her back with her legs splayed wide. Some guy was right there between them, moving in a way that left no room for doubt, his bright yellow shirt making the whole thing pop like a bad movie. They froze when I burst in, and I snapped another burst of 9 pics before shoving the camera in my pocket. Then I stomped over to the bed and laid into the guy, still stunned, with a couple of solid punches to the face. I must have rattled him good, 'cause he didn't even fight back when I yanked him off my shrieking wife, hauled him to the door, and booted him out of the house. Went smooth enough, probably helped by a few extra whacks I threw in along the way. Back in the spare room, Emma was bawling her eyes out, already in her little black lace panties and clutching her pants. I glared at her and said, "Real nice outfit for your boyfriend, huh? Get your ass out there and drag that trash I just tossed out with you. Get it off my property and get gone." My wife was bawling her eyes out, trying to feed me the usual cheater's script. "I'm so sorry, Mike, I can't even tell you how this happened, it wasn't on purpose. I swear it's the only time, and it'll never happen again. I messed up big time, please give me another chance." I bent down, snatched her lover's pants off the floor, dug into the right pocket, pulled out that gold-plated lighter, and dangled it in front of her face. "Cut the crap, Emma," I said, "don't try lying to me, I know damn well this little routine's been going down in this room every week." The second she clocked that lighter, her face went white. She knew I'd spotted it under the bed last week and put 2 and 2 together. She let out a panicked, "Oh my God." Her boyfriend turned out to be John Peterson, a guy she worked with. I'd met him before, along with his drop-dead gorgeous wife, at some fancy dinner one of Emma's bosses threw. A quick flip through his wallet confirmed it. His driver's license had his name right there, plus the fun fact that he was 8 years younger than her. I told Emma to grab his clothes and take them out to him, called him Richard by mistake in the heat of it, and a few minutes later, they peeled out in her car. I called up work and told them I'd be staying home the rest of that day and part of the next. My marriage was in shambles, so why should that sleaze Richard get to keep his happy little life with his pretty wife? I had to do something, and fast. Man, I was itching to plop down in my favorite armchair with that bottle of Jack Daniels I'd won in a work raffle. Rough stuff, perfect for drowning my woes, but I told myself to handle the important stuff first and wallow later. Step 1 was dumping those camera pics onto my computer. Most of them looked decent enough on the little screen, but one of the last shots. Pure gold on the monitor. You could see both their faces clear as day, plus Richard's body in all its glory, or lack thereof. Looked like he'd gone soft already, which made me think Emma had picked a guy who wasn't exactly packing much downstairs. Talk about a humiliating snapshot for the both of them. Next up, I rang the bank where Richard's wife worked. When she picked up, I laid it all out, told her straight about what her husband and Emma had been up to in my spare room. She gave me her email, and I fired off that picture, but I wasn't done yet. Karen, that's her name, had been nothing but sweet when we'd met, and I figured she deserved more than just the raw truth. She called me back, crying her eyes out after seeing the pics, and I suggested we link up in a couple hours. We met at this quiet little cafe, tucked away from nosy folks. I want to ruin him, Mike, she said, her gorgeous face all tight with fury, him and that Emma chick too. I gave her a nod and said, I've got a plan. See, Karen had a gig at the bank handling accounts for Richard and Emma's company, so she could peek at some juicy details. Nothing shady or illegal, just enough to stir up some trouble in their work lives. After that, I went hunting for the employee phone and email list Emma kept stashed somewhere at home, found it buried in one of her drawers. I blasted that killer photo out to 10 big shots at their office, but I kept the train rolling. Emma had let slip once that Richard was gunning for a regional manager spot, something he'd been chasing forever. So, with Karen's help, I cooked up an anonymous email, attached the most brutal pic and spilled the beans about their weekly lunchtime hookups on company time. We shot it off to the CEO and the board from a burner account that couldn't be traced back to us. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up, Richard, yelling his head off, "What the hell are you doing, you moron? You're gonna wish you hadn't." I fired back, "What the hell are you doing? You screwed up big, pal, and now you're gonna pay for it." Richard hollered back through the phone, "I'll drag you to court, you punk. What's your problem? You crying over Emma? She's all yours, keep her for good." Then he slammed the line dead. Next up was Emma, sobbing into my ear, "How can you be so heartless to me, Mike?" I kept it short and sharp, "Who's the heartless one here? Don't you think it's a kick in the teeth for me to catch my wife messing around in our own house? That's the real gut punch, Emma." She hung up quick. Yeah, blasting that embarrassing pic of their private parts to a bunch of folks was a low blow, no denying it, but I didn't feel one bit bad about it. I couldn't see any other way to settle the score. This was about my name, my pride. I'd busted my ass to shine as a star on our hockey team, always keeping it clean, no matter how big or dirty the other guys played. Even though my last game was years back, the fans and the young players still looked up to me. I was the guy who'd made it big through hockey, living the dream every kid on the ice chased. If I'd let some creep sleep with my stunning wife and just shrugged it off, I'd go from hometown hero to a pathetic joke overnight. That's not how I roll. The real question wasn't whether I'd gone too hard on Emma and Richard, it was whether I'd hit hard enough to make folks see it as a fair comeback. Sure, I'd only sent that tiny tool pic to 11 people, but I knew it'd spread like wildfire through town in no time. Then the third call rolled in, Emma's mom, telling me Emma was a wreck over at her place and would crash there for a bit, so I'd have to handle the kids. She started laying into me for what I'd done to her daughter. I told her I'd look after the kids no problem, though who knows if they're even mine for sure, and as for Emma's mess, I said she should ask her cheating daughter what got her into this hole. My mother-in-law never cared for me anyway, and that call sure didn't warm her up any. Later that night, call number 4 came in about Emma's little adventure, this time from Karen Peterson, who was all in on our payback scheme. She said Richard got hauled into a last-minute meeting with his boss that afternoon. Not only was his big promotion toast, but now he was staring down an ethics probe for fooling around on company time. Plus, Karen had locked up their joint accounts that day, leaving him with just his personal one, which barely had enough to cover a month's rent. "What's cooking on your side?" she asked. I filled her in on my moves that afternoon. I'd hit up 3 old hockey buddies who ran the hottest sports bar in town, showed them the pics, made them swear to keep it hush-hush where it mattered, and set up a little surprise for Friday's big game night. Nothing shady or X-rated, just a slideshow in the corner with shots of Richard and Emma coming and going from my place, timestamps included, paired with some fitting tunes. Everyone get the drift. That's brutal, Karen said, but I could hear the grin in her tone. I promised to send her all 18 photos and told her I was gearing up for a divorce. Emma's cheating wasn't some one-off slip-up. Karen spilled that Richard had fessed up to a 5-week fling with Emma, 7 romps in my house total, and she couldn't see any way her marriage with him was dodging the chopping block either. Barely a few minutes after we hung up, the doorbell buzzed. It was Emma's mom standing there. I let her in, and she said Emma was bunking with her for a week, giving me some time to cool off. That I shot back at Emma's mom, "I'm cool as a cucumber, lady, I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. I've got proof Emma's been fooling around with Richard in my house for at least 5 weeks, probably way longer." Her face went ghost white, and she clammed up real quick when I showed her that tiny tool pic of Emma and Richard. No more lectures after that. The next morning, I rolled over to my lawyer's office with all the photos and evidence in tow. With our prenup locked in and her cheating on record, splitting up was gonna be a slam dunk. Emma wouldn't see a dime of what I'd brought into the marriage. That afternoon, I started digging and found out she'd been swiping our joint credit card for hotel rooms with Richard before they turned my place into their love nest. I combed through the statements and spotted charges for fancy lingerie shops and high-end dinners, all timed for when I was stuck late at work or out of town for hockey alumni gigs. I shot all that dirt straight to my lawyer. The weekend dropped some surprises in my lap. Karen buzzed me up to say Richard got slapped with a suspension, no pay, while they dug into that ethics mess at his job. Turns out a coworker spilled that he and Emma had been tapping company resources to cook up a side hustle, planning to poach clients from their own employer. What Richard didn't know was Karen had nudged that coworker to come clean, using some intel she'd sniffed out at the bank. By Monday, word of their affair had blown up all over town. The sports bar slideshow I'd set up worked better than I'd ever dreamed. Richard couldn't even step foot in his regular spots without getting stares, and Emma called me up bawling, pleading for me to call off the dogs. I just told her, "Hey, you made your bed, deal with it," and clicked off. She crashed in the spare room, what I started calling the betrayal chamber, for 3 months until her and Richard shacked up in some rental apartment. But 6 weeks into playing house, their whole deal started crumbling. Richard got canned after the ethics probe, and Emma's job demoted her to half her old paycheck. For a hot minute, they were the town's favorite punchline, though that kind of gossip never sticks around long. New drama always swoops in to steal the spotlight. Still, Emma gets hit up by drunk, flirty guys at parties who slur stuff like, "A hot chick like you deserves way more than that little loser you're stuck with." Karen and I kept in touch after all that mess. We never got romantic, both of us were too banged up from getting stabbed in the back, but we leaned on each other as buddies. She put her banking smarts to work, helping me flip the cash from selling that tainted house into some solid investments, and I ended up with a nice chunk of profit that I snagged a new place that's still being built out by the lake, great view, and I'm fixing to sell this old house for a tidy profit. Even though Emma stabbed me in the back, she's still a solid mom, so we're splitting custody of the kids. A DNA test put my mind at ease. Yep, they're mine. Richard finally bailed to some other town to dodge the shame, leaving Emma to pick up the pieces solo. She couldn't keep up with the rent on that apartment they'd shared with her slashed paycheck, so it's gone now. These days, she's holed up in a cramped one-bedroom spot and had to ditch most of that giant shoe stash just to scrape by. Me. I'm still flying solo and missing Emma like crazy, but I haven't made any real moves to find someone new. One thing's for damn sure, though, I ain't ever taking her back. She's been telling folks she and Richard are probably done for soon, and she spilled to her best friend that hooking up with him was the dumbest move she ever made, a regret she'll carry to her grave. Said living with him is a sorry shadow of the good life she had with me and the kids back in our marriage. Last week, she swung by to drop off the kids and pulled me aside. She looked beat, worn out by the fallout and drowning in remorse. "I screwed up worse than I ever thought possible," she muttered, barely above a whisper. I gave her a slow nod and said, "Yeah, you sure did." She asked if there was any shot at patching things up. I laid it out plain: some lines you cross can't be uncrossed, Emma. Trust doesn't just bounce back after you smash it to bits. Tears streamed down her face as she turned and left. Watching her shuffle off, I didn't feel any thrill in her misery, just a chilly kind of peace knowing the scales had balanced out. Around our little Scandinavian town, your name's everything. Emma and Richard rolled the dice with theirs and crapped out big time. Me. Folks respect me more than ever, not as some sad sack who got cheated on, but as a guy who stood his ground and hit back with ice-cold precision. Hockey drilled that into me: the sweetest payback isn't just coming out on top, it's crushing it so hard the other side never gets back up. And that's where this tale wraps up for now. If you liked hearing this one, do me a solid, give it a thumbs up and toss a comment down below. That stuff really juices up the algorithm to spread my stories further. New around here? Hit that subscribe button, it keeps me rolling out more yarns like this for you. Appreciate you tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one.